Cast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar by solutionXchg on retention and compliant storage management. We're glad you could attend today and hope you will find the topics interesting. My name is Kristen Gerling, and I will be your host and presenter for this session. Unfortunately, my host had an emergency and could not be present today, so you will have me in both roles today. I'm a managing partner with solutionXchg and have over 20 years of consulting experience with various SAP modules and 17 years of experience with SAP archiving and imaging, mainly on the document management and processing side. I was part of a large business process outsourcing project with one of my customers where we outsourced accounts payable, accounts receivable, banking, and all kinds of sales order processing and everything. We outsourced that globally in different regions to different processing centers and have a lot of experience in anything SAP document management related. Before we start, a couple administrative items. The presentation today will take about 25 minutes, and we have 5 minutes reserved for questions at the end. On the side, you should also see that we have two case studies that you can download, and for your reference, please feel free to do so. All participants are on mute during the full duration of the webinar. Please post any questions or concerns that you have through the questions function in your administration panel on the right side of your screen. If you cannot hear us or cannot see the presentation, again, please alert us through that question panel. We will send out a transcript to those who are interested after the webinar, and you can let us know through an email to info@solutionxchg.com. That is info@solutionxchg.com. But let's dive right into the topic. So today's objectives are that I give you a little bit of introduction and definitions on what we understand as far as SAP archiving and document management, some legal requirements that you need to fulfill with the data that you're storing when it's archived, and then I'll show you the architecture and some of the archiving process and the features of our solution that we're going to highlight, called Eternity ICAS, and its benefits. And then we will break out into the questions section. So when I talk about SAP document management, I think of the typical archive link process where you have your SAP ERP system or CRM system or an S/4HANA system that uses the archive link interface to interact and interface with an enterprise content management or document management system. And that system then actually stores the actual content on storage, and you are free to select different types of storage. You can use regular file system storage, or some of you might be using write once, read many compliant storage already. There are different options there. Our product that we're focusing on today will fall into that more into that storage infrastructure category. It is a middleware allowing you to really do retention management and compliant storage on documents on any type of storage. So document management, we're looking at, for example, accounts payable invoices, material safety data sheets, HR documentation, anything document related that you're either scanning or that you already have in electronic format that you're attaching to SAP transactional data or master data records. Those of you who are exploring S/4HANA have probably heard from SAP also that SAP is launching a SAP Document Center in the S/4HANA world that is is allowing you to actually integrate a little bit better with SAP's cloud solutions like Concur, like Ariba, like success factors to kind of have a better handshake on that document management. What this SAP Document Center leverages on the back end is the content management interoperability services, CMIS. And depending on how that is implemented with you, that will also leverage, again, an ECM system or document management system. And the storage question for those systems is the same as with the archive link scenario. If you want retention and warm compliance on that storage system, you will have to solve that with an adequate storage system. The next part that I want to share with you is on the SAP data archiving side of the world. Today in the ERP world, when you're doing SAP data archiving, you're writing the file out to a file system. From that file system, you either you decide it's good enough for your organization that the file just resides on the file system, is backed up regularly, or you, after deleting the data out of the database, you execute that move to archive step in the SARA processing chain, and then that file gets moved again to an enterprise content management system or a document management system. And and from there, it is stored on whatever your preferred storage technology is. And for those scenarios, we're going to look at what can be done on the storage side, what is out there today where you have options to modernize and to really create a flexible, scalable storage infrastructure so that these files are retention managed and worm compliantly stored. So when we're talking about different regulations or requirements that are out in the industry that are can be federal regulation, can be state regulations. For example, the state of California has very strict regulations about what they call a trusted system. What they all have in common is that they require you to store the data in an immutable, tamper-proof way. So you can't delete that data prematurely. You can't make changes to that data. You have to preserve what you consider an original in its original state, and you have to prove that it can't be changed. The data should get encrypted. You have to observe retention on the data. For example, in the US, federal regulations require us to have to keep all our financial records for 7 years. In Europe, that can be 10 years. So, and Canada, I believe, is 10 years as well. So there's all kinds of different regulations, but what they have in common are these different characteristics. Since we're talking about long-term archiving, when you're thinking, for example, HR records, some of them you have to hang on for 30 years after an employee left the company. So that data has to be able to get migrated to future storage media, no matter what that is. Normally, my experience is companies have a technology change almost every 5 5 years. So you need to be able to migrate that data after 5 years to a more modern storage platform. And that has to be very easy and should happen with as little downtime as possible. Because also a requirement is that you must be able to access the data at a reasonable time, in a reasonable time frame, especially during audits. So in the past, though those requirements were handled by dedicated storage appliances. In the early days, you might be familiar with what I put here as optical jukeboxes. They had storage platters. They had like most of them had like four slots, one, and then a like a storage tower where the platters were stored that were currently not read. In those four slots, you had read slots and you had read and write slots. So there was like an arm that was moving and switching out platters depending on what documents users tried to access. And these optical jukeboxes have been discontinued for quite some time. Then EMC Centera, during that time of the optical jukeboxes, EMC Centera came on the entered the market, and they really were a game changer at that point in time and made sure that we're no longer seeing optical jukeboxes around. It was it is a hardware device, software and hardware bundled up in a device, and similar to NetApp SnapLock and IBM DR550. The IBM DR550 has been discontinued. Hitachi HCAP, I think, is on the verge of getting discontinued, and EMC Centera announced its end of sale last year in spring. So that system is going away as well, and the market has changed, and it's looking for, or it's changed into more a software defined technology where the hardware as a backend becomes interchangeable. It's just not, you're just not locked in there. The disadvantages of these old solutions were that you had hardware lock-in, you couldn't switch out the hardware as you pleased. The migrations, because they were proprietary black boxes, were very time and cost intensive. And when the products were at their end of life, then you had to, or when you wanted to upgrade to newer technology, you basically had to relicense the whole thing again, the hardware and the software, the whole device. Also, because it relied on devices with built-in platters, you had to actually license a lot of unused archiving space at the get-go when you installed those initially, just because you couldn't flexibly add more storage to them when you were running out. So you were licensing all this unused archiving space, and you were paying annual maintenance on it. Also, because they are proprietary solutions, they might were solutions that stood out in your data center, were not your common platforms for other use cases. The effort on operating them and keeping them up and running was significantly higher than with your common storage platforms. For that, again, the solution is now going solutions are going software defined, and the solution that we'll be talking about over the next couple slides is Eternity ICAS, which is such a software defined archiving solution. ICAS fulfills several legal requirements. The key ones here, or the ones that it was certified for, is one by KPMG for tamper-proof long-term archiving, basically that write once, read many. And then KPMG also certified Eternity ICAS for GDPR compliance. I'm not sure how familiar you are with GDPR, but it is a European market regulation on data privacy with hefty fines if you're in breach of that compliance regulation. In the US, with my customers, I've mostly heard that my customers really look out for GDPR compliances, specifically for in regards to HR data, where they have European distribution offices or even manufacturing offices. Then they're very strict on fulfilling GDPR compliance rules as far as personal information on employees. Can be also on marketing data or on financial data, credit cards and stuff like that. But Eternity ICAS meets that from a storage perspective. Also, Eternity ICAS was assessed by Cohasset to meet the SEC and certified to meet the SEC Rule 17A-4. This is one of the highest standards, compliance standards for the securities broker-dealer industry. So all financial markets and traders on the stock exchanges have to follow this regulation. Let's talk a little bit about the architecture of Eternity ICAS. Eternity ICAS is a middleware, so it actually sits between the enterprise content management DMS layer and the storage, providing data integrity and privacy, hardware independence, flexibility, scalability, cost efficiency. And we'll go into all these items and I'll demonstrate where and how this is being done over the next couple of slides. As said, it's a middleware, so it sits between SAP, which interfaces with your ECM DMS solution, and it's a software-defined approach, and the Eternity software services actually, when the file gets written to it, will encrypt the file if you choose to do so, can set a retention date on the file if the leading ECM DMS application cannot do that, store that file in a write once, read many mode. It can do several other things that will handle under the featured section, like self-healing, and there is a constant integrity check on the file. The files are stored using a hash algorithm, 256-bit hash algorithm, and it's not just the technical file data that is being hashed, but also its content. And Eternity can inspect those files and can see if something changed with the content or with a technical file data. So integrity is always monitored with Eternity ICAS, and with it be following industry standards and not relying on proprietary standards. It is very easy to switch out that storage layer underneath and go to the next new generation of storage when you're ready to do so. So data migrations are relatively simple. As far as storage infrastructure, what Eternity can use is regular on-site storage, like your SAN, NAS, object storage, and cloud. And I'll show you two examples on how you can use the cloud in one of the slides later. So when we look at the archiving process, is that the business application SAP in combination with the ECM, when you're scanning a document, it goes through those two layers, and the actual file is written to a file share that is provided by Eternity. It's a virtual file share that, with that file being written into that file share, it triggers the Eternity services to actually then containerize the file and move it to your preferred storage technology. And the containerized files are called CSC containers. This is a patented format. They're self-sustainable files. They include metadata as well as the actual image file or the actual data archiving file. And they're hashed. Like I said, they can be encrypted. They can have, Eternity can put a retention time or date on those files, all depending on configuration. And then those files are locked up against any changes, against any premature deletion until the retention date has passed. Now, you can extend a retention, like let's say you're in a litigation with a customer and you require a legal hold. That can be done. You can always, through Eternity services, extend the retention date, but you cannot shorten it. You can't make a 7-year financial record into a 5-year one after the fact and then delete it prematurely. Let's look at some of the features, like the self-healing of Eternity. You can set up Eternity to write to 2 different storage targets, and that protects you against silent data corruption on the disks. Think of it, this is archive data. This is not a backup, and archive data, depending on how old it is, you might not access, and you would never really realize that something was wrong with that disk until a user complains and says, oh, I can't pull up this image from 3 years ago. So what Eternity does, with its self-healing, it basically checks the same file on both storage targets and compares the hash values. And if it finds that one file is no longer intact, it copies over the file from the storage location where it found the intact file. So it can self-repair. These integrity checks and the self-healing, that is scheduled to run every day, and you can even configure with what performance intensity this self-healing process can run in your environment, so that you're not interfering with your SLAs as far as display time for users or writing speed. So logical technical failures on one system cannot influence the other. Another feature is that we are open to work with you as far as if you want to take your archive into the cloud. Eternity ICAS can be set up as a virtual server on Azure or Amazon, and that server leveraging virtual disk as storage, or you can run ICAS on a virtual machine on premise, and you can set it up to have tier 1 storage being a virtual disk and tier 2 storage being Microsoft Azure Blob storage. So you have 2 options. One is going all the way into the cloud with the storage and ICAS, and the other one is having ICAS on premise, but just a second copy of the data out on Azure Blob storage. Eternity ICAS is certified for several different business applications. It is a solution that is used beyond SAP and other areas. I mentioned the financial sector because of the SEC 17A-4 regulation. There you have trade messaging recording devices that are the critical content management, document management devices, but in also healthcare, where you could be using it for radiology, cardiology, patient folder information. But in SAP, we support a lot of different SAP Enterprise Content Management DMS systems, the SAP Content Server in its file system flavor, not the database, not the DBMax database, but the file system. We open text, Documentum, our supported system, KGS, PBS Content Link. There's a large number of different SAP archive link systems that Eternity ICAS is certified for and integrates with. To give you a little bit of information on a couple of projects we've done. You see here, for example, the logo for Deloitte as an auditing company. Deloitte is using Eternity ICAS in combination with OpenText. BMW is using it with the SAP Content Server file system. We've done a number of projects where it is being used with KGS. There is a large variety of different projects, different combinations of DMS, Enterprise Content Management System, and Eternity ICAS. The solution was built to provide you with all the benefits of software-defined archiving. So you have a future-proof solution for secure archiving with a software-defined approach that gives you a lot of security through the encryption mechanisms and the write once, read many. It uses industry standards, so it is open and does not put you in a situation where you feel like you're locked in with a specific vendor. You can switch out things easily. You can do easy migrations from one storage target to another. And overall, you're reducing your total cost of ownership by achieving higher archive performance and more storage efficiency, because you can use the storage technology that you're using for other use cases in your environment, and you just leverage a subset of that equipment's capacity for the SAP archiving scenario. You don't have to invest in a specific device for that use case only. So how do you modernize your SAP archiving infrastructure? Add this software-defined archiving layer between your ECM and DMS storage and the storage hardware. Try to leverage cloud whenever possible, and make sure that you gain hardware independence when you're jumping onto new projects around SAP archiving. Adapt so that you can quickly adapt to new storage technologies, and stay away from proprietariness where you can. Have a system that is intuitive, where you don't have a significant learning curve getting your team ramped up on maintaining this from a day-to-day basis. A few words just very quickly on solutionXchg. We focus on bringing innovative software products to the US market. Eternity ICAS is one of them, where we're an agent in the US for Eternity ICAS. We're also a premier KGS reseller, which is a DMS system. similar to OpenText or Documentum. We have extremely deep expertise in archiving and document management. All of our consultants have been around in that field around 20 years. So we've seen the world in the R2 days and R3 days, and now we're jumping to the S4HANA world with you. We're specialized on low cost and high quality and high ROI add-on solutions from these selected vendors. And like I said, we have over 20 years of experience in that market. With that, I will turn it over to questions. Thank you very much. I have one question here. Can you explain again why I need a software layer between my OpenText and the regular SAN storage that we're using today? In order to fulfill regulatory compliance for example, financial records, you must ensure that on that SAN storage that you're using, nobody can make any, not even an administrator can make any changes or delete those documents until the 7-year retention has passed. So if you don't have any write once, read many compliant solutions today, this is a reason why you could work with the Eternity software as a layer in between your OpenText and your SAN storage in order to comply with those regulations. Another question is that came in is which storage hardware vendors are supported. We have a very, very strong partnership with HPE. HPE actually also resells Eternity ICAS, but since the software is open as far as that is concerned, we also work with NetApp SAN storage products, or Hitachi, or Dell EMC, Isilon, and others. So there's no real vendor lock-in. On the cloud side, the cloud scenarios, we are really only focusing at this point on Azure and Amazon. So the Google Cloud or something like that, we would have to treat that as a new project because we have no experience with that. But we do follow the S3 protocol. But with S3, certain vendors have slightly different flavors of the S3 protocol, so we have to watch that a little bit. But Amazon and Azure are also supported. And then there's object storage, and there's different object storage providers that we work with as well. And then another question, you mentioned running ICAS in the cloud on one of your slides. What are the options for using AWS? I think I already said that. With AWS, you could run the ICAS software on an AWS server and use AWS storage as well, all in the cloud. Okay, I think we're out of time, and there are no more questions. So thank you very, very much for attending our webinar, and we hope you got some interesting takeaways. And if you have any questions, if you want to dive deeper, please feel free to contact us. You can contact us through info@solutionXchg.com, and we will be happy to help you and talk a little bit in more detail about either document management, SAP data archiving, and the Eternity ICAS solution. Thank you very, very much, and have a great rest of the day. Until next time, goodbye.